They called him the ghost of the sixth floor, a whisper in the hollowed-out cathedral of finance, a shadow that slipped between cubicles and glass-walled offices. His name was Arthur, but a name is a foothold, a thing for others to grasp onto, and Arthur offered none. He was the analyst who produced flawless reports that appeared on desks as if by magic, the silent figure in the back of the room during brutal corporate takedowns, his face as still and unreadable as a placid lake. They saw him, but they didn't see him. They saw a cog, a function, a necessary but forgettable part of the machinery. They mistook his silence for weakness, his stillness for fear. It was a mistake they would only understand when the gears of their world began to grind to a halt, when the well-oiled machine of their ambition sputtered and seized, and they found themselves standing in the ruins, looking for a cause, a reason. They would look everywhere but at the ghost, the quiet man whose name they could barely remember. They had no idea that a quiet man is not a man with nothing to say. He is a man who has already said it to himself, a man who has held the conversation that matters and come to a conclusion. They didn't understand that the most dangerous power is the one you never see coming. They were about to learn that the quietest man in the room is often the one holding all the strings. They were about to meet the tyrant, not of a nation or an army, but of a domain far more absolute, the tyrant of his own soul. And from that unshakable throne, he was about to reshape their destiny. Have you ever felt it? That chasm between who you are on the inside and what the world sees on the outside. You carry a universe of thoughts, of strength, of fire within you, but it is trapped behind a veil of silence, of reservation, of being constantly underestimated. You watch others, loud, brash, and confident, climb the ladders you know you are more qualified for. They mistake your thoughtfulness for hesitation, your precision for slowness, your quiet for a lack of presence. They speak over you in meetings, they take credit for your ideas, they dismiss you with a glance. And a part of you, a small, treacherous part, begins to believe them. It begins to wonder if the fire is real or just an illusion. It begins to think that perhaps you are what they see, small, insignificant, a ghost in the machine. This is not just a feeling. It is a battle being waged in the silent coliseum of your mind. It is the war for your own self-perception, and it is a war you have been losing. You've been told to speak up, to be more assertive, to fake it till you make it. But what if that is all wrong? What if the path to unshakable power isn't about becoming louder, but about making your silence deafening? What if your greatest strength isn't in conforming to their world, but in forcing them to reckon with yours? Today, we are not talking about changing your personality. We are talking about forging it into a weapon. We are exploring the path of the quiet tyrant, the individual who masters the inner world so completely that the outer world has no choice but to bend. This is not about aggression. It is about control. Not control over others, but the ultimate, absolute, and tyrannical control over yourself, your impulses, your emotions, your perceptions. It is from this bedrock of inner strength that true destiny is shaped. We will journey with a man who was deemed invisible and watch as he becomes inevitable. We will deconstruct the tools he uses, tools forged in the ancient fires of Stoic philosophy and honed by the harsh realities of the modern world. This is not a lecture. It is an awakening. It is a mirror held up to that powerful soul you have kept hidden for far too long. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop being the ghost? Are you ready to let them meet the tyrant within? The first tremor in the empire of glass and steel came not from a market crash or a hostile takeover, but from a single sheet of paper on the desk of a man named Marcus Thorne. Thorne was a titan, a man whose voice could make markets tremble and whose ambition was a force of nature. His world was one of noise, of shouted orders, of decisive, brutal action. He sat at the apex of the food chain, and he had not gotten there by being quiet. The paper was Arthur's latest market analysis. It was, as always, perfect. The data was immaculate, the projections uncannily accurate. But there was something else, something tucked away in the footnotes, a single, elegantly phrased sentence that pointed to a catastrophic failure in a project Thorn had personally championed. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't an opinion. It was a quiet, undeniable fact laid bare with surgical precision. Thorn stared at the sentence. It was like finding a perfectly cut diamond in a shovelful of gravel. It was too precise, too calm. Anyone else would have flagged it, written a panicked email, demanded a meeting, but not Arthur. He had simply stated the truth, as if observing that the sky was blue, and left it for Thorn to discover. It was a display of confidence so profound it bordered on arrogance. Or was it something else? Thorn had dismissed Arthur 1,000 times. The quiet man who sat in the corner, who seemed to shrink into the wallpaper. He had mistaken the silence for a lack of ambition, the stillness for an absence of a spine. Now, reading this single, devastating sentence, Thorn felt a prickle of something he hadn't felt in years: uncertainty. Who was this man? What did he know? The ghost had just spoken, and his whisper was louder than all the shouting in Thorn's world. The battle had begun, not in the boardroom, but in the mind of one man, sparked by the quiet defiance of another. The first principle of the quiet tyrant is this: your mind is the only kingdom you will ever truly rule. Everything outside of it, the opinions of others, the whims of fortune, the noise of the world, is periphery. It is chaos. But within the walls of your own skull, you are the absolute sovereign. Arthur understood this not as a philosophical platitude, but as a practical, strategic imperative. While others were consumed with managing perceptions, with playing the game of office politics, Arthur was fortifying his inner citadel. What does this look like? Imagine your mind as a fortress. Every thoughtless reaction, every surge of anger, every pang of insecurity is a breach in the walls. It is an enemy soldier storming your gates, seizing control of your throne. The man who is a slave to his emotions is a king in name only, a puppet whose strings are pulled by every passing slight and every unexpected setback. Arthur had trained himself to be the gatekeeper. When one of Thorn's lieutenants, a man named Sterling known for his verbal brutality, publicly ridiculed Arthur's conservative projections in a team meeting, the room tensed. They expected Arthur to stammer, to shrink, to crumble. They saw the attack, the external event. What they didn't see was the process happening within Arthur's citadel. The insult arrived at the gates. Arthur, the gatekeeper, observed it. He did not immediately let it in. He examined it. What is this? It is a collection of words. Who do they come from? A man who feels powerful only when making others feel small. His power, therefore, is a fragile, borrowed thing. What is his intent? To provoke a reaction, to demonstrate his dominance. If I react with anger or shame, I am validating his power. I am handing him the keys to my kingdom. I am letting his soldier through my gate. So, what is the proper response? Arthur did not react. He did not defend himself. He simply held Sterling's gaze, his expression unchanging, a calm sea meeting a crashing wave. After a moment of profound, uncomfortable silence, he said, his voice even and low, "The data is the data. My analysis stands." He did not attack Sterling. He did not justify his work. He simply stated his position, a rock against which the other man's bluster broke and receded. The room was stunned. Sterling, deprived of the emotional reaction he craved, was left sputtering, his power play completely diffused. Arthur had not won by fighting back. He had won by refusing to fight on his enemy's terms. He had kept his kingdom secure. How do you begin to build this fortress? It starts with observation, the practice of watching your own mind. When someone cuts you off in traffic, do not just feel the anger, observe it. Say to yourself, there is anger rising. When you feel the sting of criticism, observe it. There is a feeling of shame. By naming it, by observing it as a weather pattern passing through your kingdom rather than the king itself, you create separation. You create a space between the stimulus and your response. In that space lies your power. That space is the territory of the quiet tyrant. You begin to choose your responses rather than simply having them. You are no longer a leaf in the wind of circumstance. You are the mountain that watches the wind blow. This is not about suppression. It is not about pretending you don't feel. It is about feeling the emotion, acknowledging it, and then deciding whether it serves you to act upon it. Most of the time, it does not. The world wants you to be reactive. It thrives on your unthinking, emotional responses. To deny it that satisfaction is your first act of quiet rebellion. It is the first stone laid in the foundation of your inner citadel. Think about the last time someone's words threw you off balance. The last time a setback sent you into a spiral of doubt. You did not lose to the person or the event. You lost to your own uncontrolled reaction. You let the enemy through the gates. The quiet tyrant understands that true strength is not the absence of provocation, but the mastery of response. He does not pray for a peaceful sea. He learns to sail in a storm. His peace is not dependent on the world outside. It is a peace he generates from within, a peace that comes from absolute sovereignty over his own mind. This is the first and most critical step. Before you can shape your destiny, you must first master the one thing you have been given complete control over, your own mind. The world can scream all it wants. From within the walls of your citadel, it is nothing more than a distant echo. The second pillar of this quiet power is the weaponization of silence. In a world that equates noise with importance, silence is a radical act. It is a vacuum into which the insecure and the arrogant will inevitably pour their own anxieties. Arthur's silence was not an absence of sound. It was a presence. It was a tool, wielded with the same precision as his data analysis. He understood that the man who feels compelled to fill every pause, to answer every question immediately, to constantly justify his existence with words, is a man who is fundamentally insecure. He is seeking validation from the outside. The quiet tyrant needs no such validation. His validation comes from within. After the incident with Sterling, the office dynamic began to shift in subtle ways. People noticed Arthur differently. His silence was no longer seen as timidity, but as something else, something heavy. It had weight. Sterling, in his arrogance, decided to confront Arthur directly, to bully him back into the box of insignificance he had created for him. He cornered Arthur by the coffee machine, a place of casual social ambush. "You got lucky in there," Sterling sneered, his voice a low growl meant to intimidate. "Thorne might be impressed by your little numbers game, but don't think for a second you're anything more than a glorified calculator." Arthur poured his coffee. He took his time adding the precise amount of sugar he always did. He did not look at Sterling. He let the other man's words hang in the air, unsupported, decaying in the profound quiet. This is a crucial tactic. When you are attacked verbally, the aggressor expects a certain rhythm: attack, defense, counterattack. By refusing to engage, by offering only silence, you break the rhythm. You seize control of the interaction. Sterling was left standing in the wake of his own aggression, feeling foolish. He had thrown a punch into empty air. He pressed on, his voice getting louder, a sign of his growing desperation. "Are you listening to me?" I said. Arthur finally turned, his eyes calm, his expression neutral. He looked at Sterling not with anger, not with fear, but with a kind of detached curiosity, like a biologist examining a particularly loud insect. And then he did nothing. He said nothing. He simply held his gaze. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. In the roaring silence, Sterling's bravado crumbled. He was the one who looked away first, muttering something under his breath and striding off. Arthur had not said a word, yet he had won the encounter so completely, so devastatingly, that everyone who witnessed it felt the power shift. How can you apply this? The next time you are in a negotiation, in a confrontation, in any situation where you feel pressured to speak, try an experiment. Embrace the pause. When asked a difficult question, do not rush to answer. Take a breath. Look the person in the eye. Let the silence stretch. It is a power vacuum. They will become uncomfortable. They will often jump in to clarify, to soften their position, to reveal more than they intended. They are projecting their own discomfort into the space you have created. You learn more from what people say in the silence than from what they say in response to your questions. In a world of constant chatter, the one who is comfortable with silence is the one who holds the power. Think of your words as currency. Are you spending them wildly, giving them away to anyone who asks, devaluing them with every thoughtless utterance? Or are you a miser, spending them only when they can secure the greatest return? The quiet tyrant is an economist of language. He knows that the fewer words he uses, the more each one weighs. When he does speak, people listen because it is an event. They lean in because they know that what he is about to say is the result of careful thought, not a reflexive impulse. His words are not filler, they are foundational. They are the pillars that support his reality. Start today. Practice listening more than you speak. Practice holding your tongue when you feel the urge to defend yourself. Practice using silence as a space for thought, not as a void to be filled. You will be amazed at what you see and hear when you stop drowning out the world with your own noise. You will see the insecurity behind the bluster, the fear behind the aggression. You will see the game for what it is. And from that place of quiet observation, you can begin to make your moves, not as a pawn, but as the player who sees the entire board. Your silence is not empty. It is a statement. It is a declaration that you are not here to play their game of noise and reaction. You are here to play yours. The third discipline of the quiet tyrant is the mastery of perception. The Stoics taught that we are not disturbed by events, but by our interpretation of events. This is the ultimate battlefield. It's not the corporate ladder, not the marketplace, not the social hierarchy. The real war is fought and won in the 6 inches between your ears. It is the war over the meaning you assign to the things that happen to you. Arthur was not just a data analyst. He was an analyst of reality itself. He understood that while he could not control Thorn's actions or Sterling's insults, he had absolute, tyrannical control over what those things meant to him. Thorn, intrigued and unsettled by the ghost in his machine, called Arthur into his office. The office was a monument to power, a vast expanse of glass and mahogany overlooking the city, designed to make visitors feel small. Thorn was a master of these environmental mind games. He remained seated behind his enormous desk, forcing Arthur to cross the vast expanse of carpet, a supplicant approaching a king. This was a frame, a narrative being imposed. I am powerful, you are small. Many would have walked that walk feeling their confidence shrink with every step. They would have accepted the frame. Arthur did not. As he walked, his inner tyrant was at work, reframing the narrative. The inner dialogue wasn't, I am walking into the office of a powerful man. It was, this man needs something from me. My analysis, my insight. He is the one who has summoned me. He has brought me into his space because I possess something he lacks. He saw the desk not as a throne, but as a barrier, a sign of the distance the man needed to feel secure. He saw the view not as a symbol of Thorn's power, but as a distraction from the real work that happened in the minds of men. By the time he reached the desk, he was not a supplicant. He was an equal, meeting on his own terms in the kingdom of his own mind. Thorn gestured to a chair, a deliberately uncomfortable, low-slung piece of designer furniture that would put Arthur physically beneath him. Arthur, Thorn began, his voice a smooth, practiced purr of authority. Your work has been precise, but your last report, the footnote, it was a bold move. He was testing him, trying to provoke a reaction to see if the quiet man had a spine or if it was just a lucky shot. Arthur sat, but he didn't shrink into the chair. He sat upright, taking up space, his posture calm and assured. He met Thorne's gaze. "It wasn't a move, Mr. Thorne," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It was a fact. The data led there. I reported it." Notice the reframe. Thorne called it a bold move, implying a political game, a challenge. Arthur reframed it as an act of objective, impersonal truth. He was not a player in Thorne's game. He was a servant of the facts. This took all the personal animosity out of the exchange. It elevated him from a subordinate challenging a superior to a professional stating a reality. Thorne leaned forward, a predator sensing a strange, new kind of prey. Some would say burying such a critical piece of information in a footnote was cowardly, a way to deliver a blow without taking responsibility. Another frame, another test. Arthur's inner tyrant assessed it, the accusation cowardice. The underlying meaning, "I am judging you and my judgment is what matters." Arthur refused the frame. "My reports are for those who read them carefully," he replied, a subtle but devastating counter. He was not just defending himself, he was turning the accusation back on Thorne and his team. The implication was clear: if you missed it, that is a failure of your attention, not my courage. He was saying, "I operate at a level of detail you are not accustomed to. Keep up." In that single exchange, Arthur had dismantled Thorne's frame of power and replaced it with his own frame of competence. He had done it without raising his voice, without showing emotion, without any of the traditional markers of a power play. He had won the battle of perception. Thorne, a man who had not been intellectually challenged in his own office for over a decade, leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. He was looking at the ghost, but for the first time he was seeing the man. And the man was not what he expected. How do you apply this in your own life? Start by recognizing the frames being placed on you every day. When your boss gives you an impossible deadline, the frame is, "My time is more valuable than yours. Your life must now revolve around my request." When someone insults you, the frame is, "My opinion of you is what defines you." When you face a setback, the frame society offers you is, "This is a failure and you should feel shame." Your task is not to argue with the frame. It is to offer a more powerful one. The impossible deadline. You can reframe it not as a burden but as an opportunity to demonstrate your incredible efficiency or as a chance to negotiate your priorities. The insult. You can reframe it not as a reflection of you but as a reflection of the other person's pain or insecurity. The failure. You can reframe it as a data point, a lesson, a tuition payment for your education in life. This is the essence of what the Stoics called the art of acquiescence. It is not passive resignation. It is the active, conscious choice to interpret events in a way that empowers you rather than diminishes you. The world will constantly try to tell you what things mean. The quiet tyrant reserves that right for himself. He is the ultimate arbiter of his own reality. He understands that nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so. He is the thinker. He is the one who decides. This is not a trick. It is the fundamental secret to a life of inner peace and outer effectiveness. Master your perceptions, and you master your universe. The fourth domain of the quiet tyrant is the principle of directed action. Inner strength is not a passive state. It is not enough to simply sit within your inner citadel, impervious to the world. A fortress is useless if the army within it never marches out. A king who never leaves his throne room is a prisoner. The purpose of building this unshakable inner foundation is to enable you to act in the outer world with precision, courage, and devastating effectiveness. The world is moved by action, not by thought alone. But the actions of the quiet tyrant are different. They are not born of frantic energy, desperate ambition, or emotional reaction. They are the calculated, deliberate movements of a master strategist. Arthur knew that defending his position was not enough. Dismantling his opponent's frames was not enough. To truly shape his destiny, He had to build something. He had to act. The failing project that he had identified in the footnote was a symptom of a larger disease within the company, a culture of loud, charismatic leaders making reckless decisions based on gut feelings rather than hard data. It was a culture that celebrated noise and punished quiet competence. Arthur's goal was not simply to survive in this culture, but to change it. Not through a direct assault, which would be futile, but through a slow, steady, and undeniable demonstration of a better way. He began his campaign not in the boardroom but in the trenches. He identified a small, underperforming division of the company that everyone else had written off. It was a corporate graveyard, a place where careers went to die. To the rest of the company, it was a lost cause. To Arthur, it was an opportunity, a place where he could act without the scrutiny of the titans on the top floor. He went to Thorne with a simple, quiet proposal. "Give me 6 months with the Atlas Division," he said. "No extra resources, no new staff. Just let me guide their strategy based on my analysis." Thorne, intrigued by this strange, quiet man, agreed. It was a low-risk gamble for him. If Arthur failed, he would simply be another victim of the corporate graveyard. If he succeeded, well, that would be interesting. Arthur's approach to leadership was unlike anything the division had ever seen. He didn't give rousing speeches. He didn't set audacious, unrealistic goals. He didn't manage by fear or charisma. He began by meeting with every single person in the division, from the managers to the assistants. And he did one thing: he listened. He sat in their offices in the break room, and he listened to their frustrations, their ideas, their hidden knowledge of what was truly broken. He didn't speak. He absorbed information. He was building a map of the reality of the division, not the fantasy that existed in the spreadsheets on the top floor. His actions, when they came, were small, precise, and impactful. He didn't announce a grand new vision. He made one small change to a supply chain process that saved the company thousands of dollars a day. He didn't fire underperformers. He reassigned a data entry clerk who was miserable and failing to a quality control position that matched her meticulous nature, where she instantly thrived. He didn't create a new product. He took an existing, failing product and, based on his deep analysis of customer complaints, the quiet data no one else was listening to, he suggested 3 small tweaks. The product's sales tripled in a month. Each action was a quiet statement of his philosophy: reality is king. Data is the voice of reality. Listen to the data and act accordingly. He was not leading through personality. He was leading through truth. He was demonstrating that quiet, focused, and intelligent action was infinitely more powerful than loud, unfocused, and emotional bluster. The employees of the Atlas Division, long accustomed to being ignored or shouted at, began to respond. Their morale lifted. They started bringing him their ideas, their data points. They trusted him, not because he was charismatic, but because he was effective. They saw that his actions worked. This is the essence of directed action. It is action that flows from a place of inner stillness and clarity. How many times have you acted out of anxiety, making a rash decision because you felt you had to do something? How many times have you been paralyzed by fear, unable to act at all? The quiet tyrant avoids both traps. He waits for the opportune moment, the moment when his inner clarity aligns with an external opportunity. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. It means seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it were, and then acting in the most rational and effective way possible within that reality. Your life is the same. You may not be turning around a corporate division, but you are the CEO of your own existence. Are your actions chaotic and reactive, or are they deliberate and precise? Do you spend your energy on 100 different things, making an inch of progress in 100 different directions? Or do you focus your power, your will, on a single, critical point until the wall breaks? The quiet tyrant does not waste movement. He is a master of spiritual and practical leverage. He finds the point where the least amount of effort will produce the greatest result. To practice this, take a look at a problem you are facing. Instead of immediately trying to solve it with brute force, stop, be quiet, observe it, gather your data, listen to the quiet signals. What is the real problem here beneath the surface noise? What is the one small, precise action you could take that would begin to unravel the entire knot? Don't look for the grand, heroic gesture. Look for the intelligent one. Look for the quiet move that no one else sees, the one that changes the geometry of the entire board. Your power is not in the volume of your actions, but in their precision. Build your fortress, master your perceptions, and then, when the time is right, march your army out and act with the quiet confidence of a man who knows he is not gambling, but is simply executing on a truth he has already uncovered. That is the path of directed and devastatingly effective action. The fifth and final law that governs the world of the quiet tyrant is the principle of amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is perhaps the most difficult, and yet the most liberating of all the Stoic disciplines. It is the practice of not just accepting, but embracing everything that happens in your life as if you had chosen it yourself. The setbacks, the betrayals, the tragedies, the unfairness of it all. The quiet tyrant looks upon these things not as obstacles to his happiness, but as the very materials from which his destiny is forged. He does not merely tolerate his fate, he loves it. As the Atlas division began to quietly succeed, the inevitable happened. The success attracted attention, and attention attracts jealousy. Sterling, seeing his own star begin to fade as Arthur's ascended, saw an opportunity not to compete but to destroy. He began a subtle campaign of sabotage. He fed bad data into the division's reports. He spread rumors that Arthur was cooking the books, that his success was a statistical illusion. He used his social influence to turn key managers against the quiet, unassuming analyst who had come from nowhere. One morning, Arthur arrived to find that a critical project had been catastrophically derailed overnight. A key client had pulled out, citing concerns that Sterling himself had secretly planted in their ear. The division was thrown into chaos. The fragile morale he had built began to crumble. His team looked to him, their faces a mixture of panic and accusation. In that moment, Arthur had every reason to feel anger, betrayal, and despair. He had played by the rules, he had acted with integrity, and he had been undone by the petty treachery of a lesser man. This was his great test. What does the average person do in this situation? They rage, they complain, they cry out, "Why me? This isn't fair." They become a victim of their circumstances. They allow the external event to shatter their inner citadel. But Arthur's mind, a place forged by the discipline of the quiet tyrant, operated on a different algorithm. His first thought was not, "This is a disaster." His first thought was, "This is an opportunity." He looked at the wreckage of his project not as an ending, but as a new and interesting beginning. He called his team together. They expected a speech of either blame or desperation. He gave them neither. His voice was calm, steady, betraying no hint of the turmoil that should have been raging within him. "What has happened," he began, "is a data point. The system has been stress-tested and it has revealed a weakness. Not in our work, but in our environment. Our success has made us a target. This is not a failure. It is a promotion. We have been promoted to a higher level of difficulty in this game." He reframed the event so powerfully that the entire energy of the room shifted. He took an act of sabotage, an undeniable negative, and he embraced it. He loved it. He treated it as a necessary and even desirable part of their journey. "Sterling has done us a favor," he continued, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. "He has shown us our vulnerability before it became truly catastrophic. He has shown us that our foundation needs to be stronger. He thinks he has set a fire to burn our house down. We will use that fire to forge our tools into steel. This is Amor Fati in action. It is the ultimate alchemy of the soul, the ability to turn lead into gold. It is the refusal to be a victim. It is the defiant declaration that everything, absolutely everything, that happens to you can be used to your advantage. A lost job is an opportunity to find a new path. A betrayal is a lesson in judging character. A sickness is a chance to reevaluate your priorities. An insult is a chance to practice forgiveness and emotional resilience. The obstacle does not just become the way. The obstacle is the way. How do you cultivate this superhuman ability? It begins with a simple, radical question you ask yourself in the face of any adversity. How can I use this? Not how can I endure this? Or how can I get over this? But how can I use this? This question shifts you from a passive position to an active one. It turns you from a pawn of fate into a collaborator. You start to see life not as a series of things that happen to you, but as a series of challenges designed for your specific growth. You start to see the universe not as a cold, indifferent machine, but as a sparring partner, constantly testing you, strengthening you, pushing you to become the person you were meant to be. Arthur used the sabotage to unify his team. They were no longer just a collection of employees. They were a unit, forged in a shared crisis, bound by a common enemy. He used the setback to justify building more robust, transparent reporting systems that made future sabotage impossible. He used the attack on his character to demonstrate his unshakable calm under pressure, earning him a level of loyalty and respect that a dozen successful projects never could have. He turned Sterling's poison into his own personal medicine. In his attempt to destroy Arthur, Sterling had inadvertently made him indestructible. This is the final and perhaps greatest power of the quiet tyrant. He has no bad days. He has no failures. He has only outcomes, and every outcome is a lesson, a tool, a stepping stone. He has so thoroughly conquered his inner world that the outer world, in all its chaos and cruelty, can no longer touch him. It can throw its worst at him, and he will simply smile, thank it for the gift, and use it to build the next floor of his palace. This is not a denial of pain. It is a reframing of it. It is the ultimate power. To love your fate is to become invincible, for if you have chosen everything that happens, then how can you ever truly lose? The final confrontation was not in a boardroom, but in the silence of Thorne's office. The Atlas Division, against all odds, had not only recovered but had become the most profitable and efficient unit in the entire company. Arthur's methods, his quiet leadership, his focus on data and reality, had been vindicated in the most undeniable way possible, on the bottom line. Sterling had been exposed not by Arthur's accusations, but by the stark, irrefutable success of the man he had tried to bury. His own division, run on bluster and fear, was faltering. The numbers told the story. The ghost had become the foundation. Thorne had summoned Arthur once again, but this time the dynamic was different. Thorne came out from behind his desk. He walked to the window, his back to Arthur, looking out over the city he had conquered. "I don't understand you," Thorne said, his voice stripped of its usual bravado, replaced by a genuine, weary curiosity. "I've spent my whole life building this. It was a fight. Every day a war. You have to be loud, you have to be ruthless. You have to make them fear you. That's how the world works." He turned to face Arthur. "But you did none of that, and you won." Arthur stood in the center of the room, a pillar of stillness. He did not feel triumphant. He did not feel arrogant. He simply felt present. The war Thorne spoke of was a war Arthur had never fought. He had been fighting a different war, the internal one. And because he had won that war so completely, the external battles became almost effortless. "You believe the world is a battlefield," Arthur said, his voice as calm and clear as it had been on the first day they met. "I believe it is a system. a system governed by cause and effect. You try to bend the system to your will through force. I simply try to understand the system as it is and to act in accordance with it. Your strength is in your will. My strength is in my understanding." Thorn stared at him, the gears turning in the mind of a man who had not considered a new idea in a generation. He was seeing the world through a different lens for the first time. He was seeing the immense, terrifying power of the man who did not need to shout, who did not need to intimidate, who did not need to fight, because he had already aligned himself with the fundamental nature of reality. "What do you want?" Thorn asked, the ultimate question of the ambitious man. "My job, this company." Arthur shook his head slightly. "What you have is a throne. A throne requires constant defense. It requires you to live on a battlefield. I have a kingdom." He gestured not to anything in the room but to himself. "A kingdom that needs no defense because it is within me. From that kingdom I can build anything. I don't want your throne. I want to continue my work. To build systems that are based on truth, not on personality. To create value, not just extract it." In that moment, the power dynamic in the room and in the company was permanently and irrevocably altered. Thorn, the Titan, the apex predator, was asking a ghost for permission to exist in his own world. He realized that for all his wealth and power, he was a slave to his ambition, his fear, his temper. He was the king of a chaotic kingdom, constantly under siege. Arthur, the quiet man with nothing, was the master of his own universe. He was free. He was the true tyrant, the one whose rule was absolute and unchallengeable because his domain was himself. This is the end of our story, but it is the beginning of yours. The path of the quiet tyrant is not a fantasy. It is a choice. It is the choice to stop reacting and start responding. It is the choice to build your inner world into an impregnable fortress. It is the choice to wield your silence as a weapon, to master your perceptions, to act with precision, and to embrace your fate as if you had scripted it yourself. Look at your life. Look at the noise, the chaos, the constant demands for your attention and your emotional energy. You have been playing the game on their terms, by their rules. You have been trying to win a battle on a field that was designed for you to lose. The quiet tyrant walks off that battlefield. He creates his own. He understands that the ultimate power is not the power to command armies, but the power to command oneself. It is a quiet power. It is an invisible power. But it is the only power that can truly shape a destiny. The world does not need another loud, desperate man chasing a fleeting throne. It needs more quiet tyrants, more men and women who have so thoroughly conquered their own souls that they become a force of nature, a source of order in a world of chaos. It needs you. The journey is not easy. It requires discipline. It requires courage. It requires you to face the undisciplined parts of your own mind and bring them to heel. But every step you take on this path, you will feel yourself becoming more solid, more centered, more real. You will feel the flimsy structures of the world's opinions lose their power over you. You will begin to move through the world not as a leaf in the wind, but as the mountain. So the question is not whether you can. The question is whether you will. Will you continue to be a slave to circumstance, a reactor, a ghost in someone else's machine? Or will you begin the great and noble work of becoming the absolute, undisputed, and quiet tyrant of your own soul? The choice, as always, is yours. Your destiny is not written for you. It is forged by you. Start forging. The fire is within. The hammer is in your hand. And the world is the anvil waiting to see what you will create. Do not just change your life. Become unrecognizable to the person you were yesterday. And let the world wonder in hushed and reverent tones just who you have become. Join us on this journey. Subscribe and become part of a community of individuals who are not content to be the echo, but are determined to be the voice, even if it is a quiet one. The chronicle continues. Your chronicle has just begun.